A few years ago, I started working at a small restaurant on a nice street in a peaceful town. It was a cool place that served lots of different foods like American, Indian, Thai, French, and more. Before, it used to be a Chinese restaurant that everybody liked, but the owner passed away. Then a woman from the city bought it, but people in town weren't too happy about it. She was a bit disorganized, and it was really hard to get the permissions to renovate the old building. We had to do most of the renovations ourselves because dealing with the rules for old buildings was hard. At first, everything was fine, but then weird things started happening. Like during a meeting, the front door kind of opened by itself, but there was nobody there. We thought it might have been because of the wind, you know. Once, a colleague was alone at night when suddenly, a case for a drill flew right past her, as if it appeared out of thin air. She was really scared and told us all about it the next day. After that strange incident, more weird things started happening. Our boss suspected someone was secretly getting into her office, even though nobody was. We heard strange sounds, doors opening on their own, and things disappearing, like ingredients just vanishing into thin air. It was all really strange and spooky. Something really weird happened in the kitchen. Usually, it's loud with all the machines, but one day, it suddenly got super quiet, like someone turned off the sound. I checked the machines. They seemed okay, but when I went back to cook, it got quiet again. I started feeling dizzy and sick, so I went outside for fresh air. While I was outside, I heard my boss making a strange call asking for random things because she also felt something strange in the kitchen. What surprised me was that I was right there with her when she felt it. After that, work became really stressful for a while. Some people were thinking about leaving, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay either. It all felt overwhelming. But then, things calmed down. The strange things happening at work decreased, and it returned to just being normal work again. Something unexpected happened. When the boss wasn't at the restaurant, we found old papers hidden in a dusty corner. We learned that the restaurant had an interesting past. It wasn't only a Chinese restaurant. It was a secret meeting place during a major protest in town years ago. The owner at that time was part of controversial movements, and this restaurant was really important for those activities. As we kept looking through those papers, we discovered more about a secret story. It looked like the previous owner had left hints about hidden passages and secret places in the restaurant. We began searching around, and, surprise, we found a secret door in the kitchen that led to a small room. Nobody remembered. It felt like going back in time when we stepped inside. In that room, we found lots of stuff from the protest days like posters, old photos, and even some letters and diaries. It was really cool to see how this place used to be really important during that time. We listened to parts of people talking in the restaurant, and things started to make sense. The weird things happening weren't because of ghosts or anything scary. It was just the old building holding on to memories from before. The strange sounds and strange feelings were just the building telling its story in a really surprising way. It felt good, honestly. Not having to think about ghosts made everything less scary. We began to like the history and told stories to customers who were interested. It became our special secret, making the restaurant feel even more unique. Eventually, the place became known for its old stories, and more customers started coming. People enjoyed eating there because it had a fascinating history. As workers, it was neat to be involved in that story, even though it was a little spooky at first. I used to work late nights at a fast food restaurant for almost a year. This story happened about 10 years ago. It was a rainy autumn night that wasn't too cold but not comfy either. Our restaurant only served customers at the drive-thru during the night, and that night I was the only one working. At 1 a.m. I hadn't seen anyone for a long time, and I was really tired, struggling to stay awake. Suddenly, a car arrived in the parking lot. It wasn't anything special, just an old regular car. But it got my attention because it was the first activity I'd seen in a long time. A really tall guy walks up, wearing a hoodie that covers his face. I thought he'd see the place was closed inside and go to the drive-thru instead. But he started banging on the front door instead. I was like, doesn't he understand it's closed? After a minute of hearing banging, I went to talk to him. I walked through the dining area, all set to explain, but when I got close, he left. I went back to my spot, thinking the car would come to the drive-thru soon, but it stayed put. Something felt odd. It was raining hard, and it was super cold. I couldn't understand where he went. He must have been wet and really cold out there. After about 30 more minutes, I felt really bored and wanted to take a break to smoke a cigarette. I went outside and stood under a small roof to stay dry while I smoked. I was trying to finish quickly and go back inside, but I couldn't stop thinking about something being wrong with the car. I was curious, so I walked closer to check something out. But because it was raining and water was getting in, I thought I should go back. Then, I noticed a man standing near the door, which was still open. I got really scared. Was he waiting for me? All of a sudden, he kicked something, and the door closed, locking me out. This stranger went into the place I was in charge of. I got really scared and called the police. It felt like a really long time for them to come, even though they were close by. When they arrived, I told them everything. They went in and quickly brought the guy out with handcuffs on. They took him away, but when I went back inside, it was a mess. Food was everywhere. Ketchup and mustard were spilled all over. And the room at the back? It smelled really bad. That guy had done something gross in there. I couldn't manage it. It was really late, past 2 a.m., and I called my boss, waking him up. The place was in such a mess. There was no way we could keep it open. So, I closed it for the night and took a few days off. I don't know how they cleaned everything up, but I'm just glad nothing worse happened when that guy came in. He seemed really out of it. Now here comes the twist. When I went back to work a few days later, people were talking about a guy who did the same tricky stuff at other places. He'd pretend to need help, then make a mess once he got inside. But guess what? The surprising part is that the person who helped catch him was totally unexpected, a cop who was off duty and just came in for a snack. He saw everything from his car, called for help before I even dialed 911. A police officer happened to be there and became the hero that night. After that, I was really careful during my shifts. It showed me that anything can happen, even late at night at a fast food restaurant. Before I continue to the next story, if you are interested in earning from YouTube without showing your face, or without making videos by yourself using artificial intelligence, like the video that you are watching right now, then I have a special free training for you. Check the first link in the description below to get instant access. I've worked at this Mexican restaurant for 2 years, and we had a really interesting guy join us. And his name is Jake. Jake started working with us during a busy lunchtime, and we had him handle the dishes because we didn't have enough time to teach him how to cook right away. But the thing is, Jake really didn't like washing dishes. When he did them, he'd make a lot of noise, use bad words quietly, and it was so loud that it frightened the people who came to our place. We talked to him about being gentler, but even though he tried for a bit, he'd soon start again, making a lot of noise and causing trouble. One day, I was outside on my lunch break, looking at the parking lot. That's when Jake came out to smoke. He didn't see me and started doing funny things, like pretending to shoot himself with his hand and shouting about how he hated working here. It was crazy, like a movie, but kind of uncomfortable to watch. I told my colleagues about it, and one of them said she knew Jake from before. She mentioned he got fired from another job for doing similar things. That worried me, so I told the boss about it. But the boss just said,
"Everyone has tough times."
But this wasn't just a tough time, it was more serious than that. A few weeks later, Jake began learning how to cook, but oh boy, he didn't take care of himself well. He smelled like cigarettes, had really long and dirty nails, yuck. But then something changed. Some folks didn't like the food. They found hairs in it and thought it tasted weird. One person even thought someone spit in their meal. We convinced them not to call the police by giving them free food. But we couldn't let Jake stay in the kitchen alone after that happened. The boss told our manager to make Jake's job really bad, so he would leave on his own. Instead of firing him, they made Jake do all the yucky tasks like cleaning trash cans and scrubbing floors. But instead of getting upset, Jake started behaving badly too. He used to shout at me and make fun of how I looked. It made me feel really uncomfortable. I decided to stop talking to him completely. Whenever my coworkers spoke to him, they'd come out almost crying. He was really mean and didn't care about hurting people's feelings. On his final day, something really surprising happened. He was cooking, and I caught him hiding a water bottle filled with yellow stuff. Later, at dinner, everyone who had the soup said it didn't taste right. When my boss tried it and said it tasted like pee, I got really scared. And when I saw Jake, he tried to run away, but my boss stopped him. We called the police, and they found a bottle that had his pee inside. The soup got contaminated, so the restaurant had to close for some time. I decided to leave my job before the restaurant opened again. Jake messed with the food and got in trouble. He got 3 years in jail for it. I felt better because I didn't want to see him again. But something surprising happened that I didn't expect. A few months after Jake went to jail, a former colleague of mine, Sarah, discovered an old newspaper article. It turns out that Jake wasn't actually using his real name. He had a habit of causing trouble at various restaurants using different names. The article was about a guy named Eric who did something like this at a burger place a few years ago. Everyone heard about it on the news, but no one realized it was connected until now. That was really surprising. I couldn't understand how this guy kept getting jobs. It got me thinking if he might do something similar when he's out of prison. I really hope not. This whole thing made me reconsider the type of people we hire at the restaurant and how crucial it is to truly know the people you work with. Some of us heard stories from other restaurants in different towns about the same kind of stuff happening. It was like this guy had a secret past of doing bad stuff at different places using different names. It felt like a crazy movie, but it was all real. It makes you think how many others might be doing weird things without anyone finding out.